Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm John Kalfa. Let's talk about some wolves. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wolf Connection podcast, episode 2. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Our producer, Steven Rivera over there. Steven, say hello.
Hello.
Hello, Steven. Steven's going to be manning the board for us for the majority of these podcasts. We are coming to you from the Wolf Heart Ranch in Acton, California at Wolf Connection. We just did our first episode with our founder, Teo Alfaro. And again, just a brief overview of what Wolf Connection is and what we do. We are a wolf and wolf dog sanctuary, as I said, located in Acton, California. So that is one of our missions. But our main mission is we are a people empowerment organization. We help a lot of at-risk youth in the foster care system up here in the Antelope Valley and Lancaster school districts. We are also branching out to the LA school districts as well. And any guests, ARC for individuals that are coming out of prison for 20 to 30 years. We do programs with them as well as veterans and drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And just to echo what we ended on in the last podcast, that we are, of course, sending love and light, and our thoughts are with everyone out there dealing with the COVID-19 virus. We are here as really just a communication for all of you to talk about wolves, our mission, what we do, and really positivity, light, and just get you all focused away from what's going on. I have with me now for episode 2, our director of programs, Amanda Beer. Do I call you Dr. Beer, or are we just going with Amanda Beer today?
Let's stick with Amanda. John.
Amanda. So Amanda, if you can, just give some of the folks, we went over some of the programs with Teo, but you are the director of our school programs here at Wolf Connection. So just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what brought you to Wolf Connection.
Yeah, I am a psychologist by training, and interestingly, I was working in private practice in Seattle and kept seeing this ad for wolf therapy in a Psychology Today magazine. And I was always like, this is the coolest shit ever. Like, no way is someone doing wolf therapy. You know, what is that about? And I had always kind of had this dream to work with animals, but spent so many years of my life training to work with people that I thought that was just kind of out of range for me. You know, life happens, and my partner ended up getting a job offer in Los Angeles. I was initially like, no way in hell are we moving to Los Angeles, but here we are. We decided that was a good move, and we were here visiting as we were preparing to move. And something in me, you know, as I'm exploring career options, took me back to that article, or the ad actually in Psychology Today, which was from one of the rehab centers that we worked with at Wolf Connection. And so I'm just wondering, you know, where is this place anyway? You know, maybe with this move, I can look into more options to bring animals and humans together. Turns out Wolf Connection was right outside of Los Angeles. So before we even moved here, I reached out to the volunteer program, and I, you know, within a month time of living here, was volunteering with the pack, and one thing led to another, and eventually my volunteer work became a full-time position at Wolf Connection.
So, you know, I just want to go into, because we've all had our different experiences of how we've gotten here. I didn't actually go into mine on the first one. That'll be for another time. No one really cares about me at this point. This is only episode 2.
We care about you, John Kalfa.
Well, I do have a question, actually.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
You know what this is now, but when you first were, you know, becoming aware of this, what did you think it would be? Because it's so specific. You know, I don't even remember what I thought this would be when I came, but it's definitely different than it is in the best way. But you know what I mean? It's
right.
much more deep personal experience But I'm just curious, like when people find out about this place, what they think it's going to be.
I didn't have a framework. It was more of this kind of essence or sense. Here's these wolves, and this organization works with youth, with at-risk youth, with rehabilitation programs, drug and alcohol use, and just this essence or this idea of bringing wolves and humans together was so fascinating, so intriguing. I guess I couldn't imagine that not being amazing, but I really didn't have a framework. I mean, it didn't come to me like, oh, this is probably like other animal-assisted therapies like equine therapy or even using canines as therapy. It just, probably seemed kind of exotic and fascinating. And even by the images of the wolves in that magazine, I mean, wolves carry a presence that's very different than dogs. And I was just immediately intrigued, but I truly didn't have. I think even after coming here, I couldn't have imagined what this would really be like to bring these majestic animals together with humans.
Right. Because I mean, that's one of the things, I mean, and that kind of just, I mean, it leads into, what kind of, I guess, awakened in you in that way, because you see these animals and, like in what way, like when you see or you hear the word wolf, I mean, what was that thing that kind of changed in you that drew you here really in that way?
It's interesting. Some people that come here say, oh, I've always had a connection with wolves. I've always really been into wolves. And that was not the case for me. I've always loved dogs and other animals. I mean, this comes up for others at Wolf Connection, but I really do believe that some wild part inside of myself connected with the wild that I could see in Maya in that photo, and that essence of wildness. And I couldn't put words to it, but I think that's what drew me here.
And it's interesting because when we spoke to Teo, he was describing, wild and what that meant and how the different ways, maybe in your line of, in your profession, what are some of the things that people think wild are, because we were talking about how wild could mean erratic or crazy and where he was thinking that, wild could be innovative or creative or just have sort of a different connotation. So, I mean, as, in your profession, I mean, how is that seen differently? When you come here and you see the way that these, that both the wolves and the kids really, and the guests that come here, that they interact differently in that way.
Well, I have to say, as you're bringing up that word wild in the context of my profession, it doesn't really resonate. Like I've never used wild in the context of therapy, really, not before coming here. The word crazy is thrown around a lot in the psychotherapies. So what initially came up for me is really being labeled that way as a kid, as being wild, being a little bit out of control. And that certainly wasn't, I suppose the fun part of it was positive, but that was primarily kind of a negative connotation. And so I think my concept of wild before this was kind of like erratic, acting out, flailing around.
Right.
And the exact opposite comes to me now. When I hear the word wild, I feel grounded, I feel alert, I feel in my senses, connected to something primal, to the land. So I'm just sitting here having this kind of full circle moment of how dramatically that word has changed for me since being at Wolf Connection.
And that's a lot of what happens, right? Because I mean, and just to rewind for a sec, those of you that may be listening for the first time or knowing about us for the first time, when she references Maya was our female alpha of this pack. I believe since we were here 11 years ago. She has since transitioned and passed away, but just to put that in context. But I mean, that's something where, we see a lot of the students that come here and even some of the guests. I mean, before we really jump into, the programs, but what are some of the differences that you see in sort of a human to human therapy, and that you've seen that's sort of a little bit of a different take when you have any animal involved and human, but more so with, a wolf and a wolf dog with a human? What's something that you see that's a little bit different?
Yeah, the thing that comes to me first, what initially pops up for me is, I think as humans, we're so conditioned and socialized to have so many walls up. There's so many social expectations in interacting with one another. And for me, one-on-one in therapy, those can really go down over time. But that can take weeks, months, really building trust in a human-to-human connection. And here I've seen those barriers and those walls fall to pieces in one interaction, 1 2-hour experience with wolves and humans. There's something, I think animals in general do that for us because they don't have those same expectations of us. But here, being in a totally unfamiliar context, listening to the creek and being with the wolves, and it just puts us in touch with a totally different part of ourselves. So I think we get to our core selves so much faster in this context.
And it's amazing because it's so simple, because a lot of us, I mean, probably, I'm sure any one of us in the room right now or anybody that comes here, I mean, as a kid, we were always, I can't speak for everyone, but, we were outside, I think, more so often, and we were, curious and investigative and looking at these, any animal, whether it was an ant, whether it was a spider, anything, and just so fascinated by how they thrived or they survived in their in the area where they were. And it's just interesting when people sort of rediscover that or reconnect with that, how, what could fire off in somebody's brain that could sort of, like you said, it sort of recalibrate, you were saying you came full circle and you kind of have that different memories, right? That just came up just in thinking about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
On that question, So, I mean, so when we talk about these programs, just, let everybody, let people know, what's the basic, expectation of the curriculum, I guess. When these students come here, I kind of gave a base outline in the first episode. It's 8 weeks. But what are some of the things that go into a typical program semester, I guess, for a lot of these kids that come here?
Yeah, I mean, I want to name that we have this 8-week program, which is the model we love, but we also do single experience programs that take youth and adults and all kinds of people pretty deep as well. For the 8-week programs, it's more of an immersion, right? Because these young people come here for 8 weeks in a row, and they have the time to let down some of that guard, but also, rebuild trust with themselves and with others over an 8-week period. There's a couple of probably core aspects of the program that are really therapeutic. One is totally being taken out of your comfort zone, right? A lot of the youth we work with grew up in the city. They grew up on concrete. They're not used to being in nature. So all of these social expectations, the groups they're part of, the way they front with each other, all the things they have to do that's like survival in that life fall to pieces here. So they're able to be vulnerable. And I think there's something about being in nature and being with these wolves and being with our group of people who are doing our best to be in our wolf selves that help them feel safe. And And so, the rest of the world's working so hard to push mindfulness and to push groundedness and to push all these things. We don't push it verbally at all. We just create this space and the kids find it in themselves. They find that they're already connected. And the other thing that we do is we are human translators of the wolf experience. So we practice a lot of storytelling. We feel like that's actually pretty primal for humans because language is so important for us. The wolves howl. As humans, we tell stories. That's how we connect. So we share the stories of the wolves, and so many of these young people see themselves in those stories, these stories of abuse, neglect, not being able to be seen for who I really am, having a tumultuous life, being expected to be something else. These wolves are expected to be dogs or to be a pet, and that's not who they truly are. And many of these young people see that. They start to see, this is who I truly am. I'm a wolf, or I'm an artist. I'm a scientist, whatever it is. I'm shy. I'm not extroverted. I'm an omega. I'm not an alpha. So through the wolf stories, they start to connect with who they truly are, and they see that validated. So, we provide this experience that's grounding and calm and allows them to be in touch with their true nature. And then we also share these stories that they really connect to. And over the 8-week period, we allow them to kind of reemerge as their true self and let go of some of what defined them in the past.
And it's interesting because we all came here via our own ways, and any one of us has come here because of a certain story that's touched us, that we resonate with. And that's something that, we don't realize, like you said, how much stories or how much storytelling really is such a basic part of who we are as humans and how we communicate and how we can get through to other individuals that maybe are closed off for the time being. But once we share these stories, and you can put really a wolf to a story, once they get on the property and they start the program, and they can physically see that wolf or see that wolf dog that has resonated with them, how much they can correlate their own story with that, right? Just some of the other things, and really, I want to say this too, because there are no expectations, right? And it's something that I'll use the term sacred timing, and we'll try to go into this a little bit. So, when we say sacred timing to a lot of these kids, a lot of these wolves and wolf dogs have come from abused backgrounds. They've, like you said before, not fully coming into their own and understanding their wolf part that's in them. So when we say sacred timing for humans, sometimes it gets lost or pressured on them to become something that they aren't. So what's something that, you've seen just that phrase really echo back with some of these kids' experiences when we say sacred timing? What's something that you've noticed over the course of time that you've been here and how that's worked for kids?
That's a good question. I think that shows up in all of our youth. Some of them are quick to jump in and talk about themselves, and they want to release this kind of guilt or shame or some piece of their story, and they release it with the group. But what another example that comes up for me is one of our students who came through the program once, and then he came back as a returnee, and we really challenged the returnees to be a role model and set an example for the other participants. And this particular student may or may not have brought some pot to the ranch and got caught using that. And sacred timing really came into play because in a world where punishment is the typical response, we did everything we could to create space for him to address the issue. So he was allowed to come back, and it wasn't easy. We sat together until he was ready to speak about it, and he ended up apologizing to his pack and sharing his process. And throughout this, there was a lot of shame that emerged because of his fear that we would no longer feel the same way about him. And who doesn't this come up for? Like, what human cannot relate?
Right. Who's not going to feel shame if they do something wrong or is deemed as wrong or socially unacceptable,
Right.
and not be accepted back? Right.
Right. So we had this beautiful opportunity, not only with him to kind of process this one-on-one, but with the whole pack. Wait a minute, we keep talking about sacred timing. So there isn't an expectation, just like with the wolves. Sometimes the wolves make progress. Hey, they're willing to come out on leash. And then for 6 months, they decide, fuck that, I'm not coming out on leash anymore. And what are we going to do?
Right.
You know, they're wolves. So the same thing happened with this young man. You know, he's showing up in a certain way. He had a setback. He is not going to change because we told him to change. And that's not even the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is that we're connecting to ourselves and each other, and we're walking through this life together that's full of mistakes, full of setbacks, full of real life. And we keep moving forward one day at a time.
Yeah. And it feels like society a lot of times takes that, what is seemingly the easy route, which is punishment. You know, the harder route would be to put in the time and make sure someone's nurtured in the way they need and get the support they need. There's a huge missed opportunity a lot of times in society. Like, we're just not putting in the time to give people what they need. And punishment's like that, you know, default setting. And young people are like the most important, you know, aspect of our society to put the time in, you know. And I think Wolf Connection does a great job with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point I had the awareness. Like, I kind of wanted to punish this young man. I'm going to acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's the easy route.
And I became aware that that was my own fear,
Yeah.
that I don't have any control of what was going on in the situation. And it was hard. I mean, we literally sat on a rock for about 2 hours waiting to see if he would speak
Right.
about the experience. And sometimes it's much harder to hold space like that than to react quickly and control a situation.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, Stephen spoke to a good point. You've been speaking to it also, is really the goal of the program is to let the individual, be it adult or not. I mean, we do have programs with adults, not just, you know, young adults or teenagers, but the goal is really for them to discover that on their own without any forceful, like, I guess, pushing in that direction. You know, and how, I mean, was that a different approach for you coming in? Or was that something that you learned, you had in your back pocket, you knew about, you know, a way to handle those things? I mean, you're great at handling that just from the get-go, but was it almost like a learned situation to sort of let it sit and let everyone sort of take it in and figure it out, kind of figure it out on their own? Was that something that had to change in you?
Well, you know, I mean, there are different philosophies in the therapeutic contents, or, you know, in the way I was trained. And I have always believed that as humans, as any being, we carry everything we need inside of us already. Now, believing that and putting it into practice are two different things, right? So I would say before I came to Wolf Connection, I still believed that, but I was probably a little bit more pushy and controlling than I am now. John's over there like, oh yeah, that still comes out sometimes.
We work in programs together, so you can. There is some pushing over from Amanda, but go ahead. I don't want to lose your train of thought. Go ahead.
But the piece is I don't just believe that for the young people we work with. This is for all of us. We are all in a process of self-discovery, of getting through our struggles and being able to go more inward than look to the outer environment to show us what's right or wrong, right?
Right.
So I have always believed that we have everything we need inside of us. I'm on my own personal journey to trust my own process, to trust myself. I mean, that journey has like sped up
exponentially.
since being at Wolf Connection. So that's been the big difference. Did I believe in that as a philosophy before I came here? Yeah, but the wolves have taught me that that's reality, and that and for us humans, I think it's a lifelong process.
And it's what I find fascinating is just how, I don't want to say quickly because that goes against the secret timing aspect of that, but just how upfront the animals are with that. And it's an interesting dynamic once you're here, and even if you visited once or twice or you go through the programming, how the relationship is so reciprocal and how there's a lot of give and take in a good way between wolf and human, and how that's probably changed a lot of thought for a lot of adults, and probably for some of the kids that come here, right? Is that fair to say? I don't know.
And the immediate feedback that you get, is that's
yeah.
Well, I love that it's both. Some of us are used to maybe a dog coming right up to us, so we can have this profound experience of being with a wolf and connecting from a distance. And even how powerful it is for that wolf to be kind of hesitant.
Yeah.
Like it's almost an honoring of boundaries. Like, I'm not going to come up and lick your face. But the youth, I think, and the people that come here, they feel the connection at the heart level. And by looking into the wolf's eyes, and that wolf is paying attention to me, lifting their ears, smelling me in the air. So there's something really profound about the distance and boundaries of that connection. And then, we have these magical things that we can't explain. Some of these wolves who never come up to the volunteers will go right up to a young person and sniff them or even lick them. And we're all standing there with our mouths hanging open as if we didn't know that was possible. But magical things happen here. And maybe as humans, we make connection seem so much more difficult than it really is. And I think these young people are hungry for connection at a heart level. And whether they would tell you that from a cognitive place or not, they come here and something opens in them.
And it's, like you said, it's there, it may, it's magical in the way that there are things that happen here that you wouldn't think would happen on sort of the outside of these, outside of this property. It's just something about these specific animals that are here with us right now, this pack that's with us at the moment, that really sort of energizes and drives this whole organization, really, and really helps these young people sort of open up and I guess discover who they really are. And it's a fascinating. It's just really just a fascinating thing that we're doing. On that, I want to touch on, because we have had study. Claremont University has done a study on us and the programs and the specific effects of the wolf therapy and what we do. If there's anything you can speak to about that, just so that people understand that this is something that's that has been studied, and it's been proven that it's working and it's helping.
Yeah, it's something that we're really proud of, that we work with. We initially worked with some doctoral students at Claremont University. We continue to have their own consulting firm now. We continue to work with them. Because listen, you'll see other programs and they're flashing all kinds of statistics, and you can show any numbers you want to, but we contract with them for a very specific reason of doing, legitimate evaluation work with pre-test, post-tests, both quantitative and qualitative research, and having a lot of integrity behind this research, which we continue. And we're clear that the more numbers we get, the better the research is. But just at the basic level, the primary things that we see is we see a profound change and a statistically significant change for these young people in 3 different areas. One is self-reflection and insight, which is huge. That speaks to that piece of being able to look within and trust oneself and make strong decisions. Connectedness to nature, which we've really discovered doesn't just look at connectedness to nature, but connectedness to everything around me. A lot of these youth come here self-described as lone wolves, and they leave here knowing that by being a living being, they're connected with wolves, with humans, with the land. And the third thing is personal growth initiative. So we see a dramatic shift in students' ability to feel empowered to make change in their lives. So they feel like when something's going wrong, they can take action to change it. They no longer feel as helpless. So those are the main things we've looked at. I could talk all day, but I won't because I see John and Steven making eyes at me.
No, you're fine. Please.
But maybe for another time. So, we've done a lot of qualitative work with the students too, speaking to their experience. One thing I will mention that's been the thing I've loved the most learning from the students is that, such a big part of this program is connecting with the wolves. But one of the things we've discovered is that what stands out heavily for these students in this program being effective is how they're greeted when they come to us. So in the qualitative work, we've discovered that one of the themes is that students feel so loved and accepted and welcomed by our human pack that they name that as one of the factors of the program that has made a big change in their life. And I say that, and I say it on this podcast now because that's something we all have the power to do. Wolves or no wolves. As a human being, I have the power to truly see another individual, to welcome them, to open my heart to them, and to be open to who they are versus who I want them to be. And that's profound in and of itself. And maybe we do a little better at that because the wolves are here to teach us and remind us.
Guide that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but that's something that we all have the capacity of doing in our everyday lives.
No, and I think that's a beautiful point, is that it's just the seeing and knowing that they are enough, and that we just know that there's more in there. And it's true. I mean, it's us as humans, especially, with the state of how things are going at the moment with COVID-19 and social distancing, and realizing that, we can still have this connection. We can still have these connections, even though we're not physically able to be maybe right next to each other, but we can have these connections through talk and through FaceTime and through things like that, and just understanding that those are acceptable, and how that's able to factor in. I do, before we end, I do want to, if there's anything you want to say or mention about the programs, we've had to, Teo mentioned, we've had to halt our programs because of the COVID-19, and obviously for the safety of the students and for everyone else, we've had to halt our programs. But anything that, a message, anything you want to say to those students that may be listening, or any of the school districts that may be knowing that we're still here, we're still broadcasting, and we're still around if need be. Anything you...
Yeah, I think this is, we're constantly challenged to dig deep and see how can I face this, what's turning into a crisis, more like a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone were here and looking around, the wolves are not too fazed by this crisis. And so we're doing our best to emanate that as well. So the biggest thing I would say as a follow-up to what we were just talking about is that wolves connect at a heart level. They see right through stress, bullshit, fear. They connect with who we really are and our hearts. And they also don't need to physically touch to connect. I mean, we have wolves that are just as connected across a fence from one another, as they are if they're touching. And we have a whole pack of wolves that connect and howl together, and they're all living on different parts of the property. So we can do the same as humans. We do not have to be in physical presence of each other to connect like a wolf, to connect from the level of the heart. And we've been so domesticated. Open our senses. What do we hear? What do we see? What do we sense? That, as humans, I think we really are afraid to be alone sometimes and look inward. And the other thing the wolves can teach us is that we're resilient. And all of the demons or fears or, insecurities we have inside, that we can be okay. We can be with those things and be okay, just as we are. We're still here. We're still ready to serve. We're exploring. We're getting creative. And that's what wolves do. They're flexible. Yeah. So if their food source, they lose their food source, they figure something else out.
Yeah.
So we're taking this opportunity to get creative and work on things like this project and some of our social media. And we're developing an online curriculum that we were planning to do anyway, but now it can come a little faster. So keep your eyes and ears out for that rolling out in the next month or so. And to all of our program participants that might be listening, we're figuring out how we can ethically reach out to you. Some of you, we have your cell phones and your emails, and some of you we're connected with on social media. So stay tuned on those things, because we will be reaching out and checking in on you all.
Yeah, and I think that's it's good for us to say that and to know that. So you also have an Instagram now. So what's your Instagram so that we can follow you at Wolf Connection? So what is it? Is it Amanda? What is it on Wolf Connection?
It's Amanda Wolf Connection, and y'all gotta forgive me. I've I've just been a stalker on Instagram for some time, and now with some pressure at Wolf Connection.
We got her on the hook now.
I'm starting to post, but it's slow going. We're getting there though.
So it's Amanda Wolf Connection on Instagram. If you guys want to check out some of the knowledge that Amanda is posting, a lot of it through programs, through her own personal journey here, I would definitely start to follow her. Again, our Instagram is Wolf Connection, one word. Stay tuned for those updates. And again, as we end, Amanda, you're welcome back anytime. So if there's any other updates, you let me know and we will get you on here. And even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, I am more than welcome to have you back on here. Thank you for spending some time with us. So for the rest of you out there, keep on listening. We're going to keep cranking these out as much as we can. Love and light to all of you. And we will see you next time. Bye.